Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Stanley Dyrector Show. We have a great show for you folks today. My guest is Mr. Michael Russnow. He is, well, gee, he's written so many things. He wrote Knots Landing, Santa Barbara. I can go on for days. But the point is, he was also a member of the Writers Guild of America West Board. But before I even get into that, my wonderful guest, Michael Russnow, I got to ask you, how and why did you get in this crazy business, becoming a writer?
Well, because it was probably the easiest thing to do vis-a-vis acting. I've always been a writer. I've always liked writing. When I was in elementary school, maybe there's a little bit of ego. You think of something that happened in your life and you try to set it down. But I was in an acting school at the time at Warner Brothers. It was called the Burbank Studios then, and basically doing that and doing well at that. At the same time, the Waltons came on the air, and I thought, gee, I can write that. And so one thing led to another, and I did get an episode of the Waltons. That was real, meaning that they were paying me. And
how did you wait? How? I don't understand this now.
Am I going too fast?
Writers, well, yeah, I'm kind of a little slow.
Well, it's only a half-hour show.
I can't chew gum and talk at the same time, but how did you get in the door of the Waltons?
Well, I called Earl Hamner, who was the creator. If you remember the show, he was the narrator, you know, when I was a boy, whatever, then it would bleed into the actual show.
Right.
And I had a friend with whom I had gone to UCLA, Tony Caden, and we had both written books separately, and I said, you know, maybe we could do some television. You know, sometimes it's easier being a team. And I saw the Waltons. I thought it was a great show. And I called Earl Hamner. And to my surprise, he called me like about 8 o'clock at night. And the phone rang, and I was like shaking, answering it. And I heard this voice saying, Mr. Russnow? And I said, that's Russnow. The first time I had to correct him many times. And it was Earl.
Wow.
You have to realize this was a time when people actually return your phone calls. And I explained that, have you heard about the CBS Development Fund? And he said, no, fill me in. And I basically explained that there was this fund that CBS would back writers for the first time if a studio didn't want to take a chance. And if they did produce the show, then the company would be responsible for that money. But if they didn't, then they would get their money back from CBS. And so Earl seemed very interested. He said, well, you know, people helped me, like Rod Serling when he was a younger man. So he brought Tony and me in, and we were sort of like at Lorimar College. We learned how to write for the show, and it took about 4 months, but eventually we got an episode.
That is really a wonderful story to hear. I mean, but who was your inspiration as a writer when you were writing, when you started?
Well, obviously Dostoevsky. No, I mean, it's not supposed that anybody was an inspiration. It's just people talk about inspirations, you know, why this or that or whatever. I think you just many people, you just are, you be. Now I sound like Ebonics or something like that. I don't know. You're in school, you have to write a short story or whatever, and then you take to it. And I don't really think anybody was an inspiration per se. It was a means. I always wanted to be an actor as well, and to get to Hollywood because I'm from New York. And I got out here to go to UCLA and did writing. I did directing and a little bit of acting, and eventually the writing hit first. So I chose to do that.
That is really something, but. The point is, a writer spends so much time alone as compared to an actor.
I'm very lonely.
You're very lonely.
Yes, I am.
Well, look, maybe some.
Will you be my friend?
Well, I'll be. It depends on the price, of course. But I wanted to ask you a few questions while you're here. You also wrote a book, or an article called "Why TV Series Don't Die a Natural Death." That title just grabs me. How did that come about?
Well, I was during a fallow period. I thought, well, maybe I could make some money writing articles, which turned out to be a big mistake because I didn't know that when you wrote articles that they didn't have to pay you for them. They would give you what they call a kill fee, and I did get paid for a few articles, but it's much more work, frankly, than writing an episode. At the same time, I was doing Barney Miller, and
Barney Miller, love it.
Wonderful show, and Barney, you know, whether they rewrite you or don't use it or whatever. As you know, the Writers Guild is very strong, and you have to be paid thousands and thousands of dollars. You spend a month researching an article, and you might get $100 or something like that. But anyway, I thought it would be an interesting thing to do, and I came up with some pitch ideas, as you would for television, for this magazine. And we thought it'd be interesting to discuss why shows like the Mary Tyler Moore Show, if you recall, just took itself off the air. They didn't have to wait to be canceled. They weren't a bottom 20 show or whatever.
Right.
So I went out and I interviewed some top people like Norman Lear and Michael Eisner and Gene Reynolds of MASH and David Gerber, head of Columbia Television, and some others, and just to glean from them, you know, why shows continue to, you know, they'll just wring every dollar they can, you know, rather than having the nobility to just leave on a high, assuming presumably if they're that successful and won a lot of Emmys, that they could probably get another deal. But anyway, that was interesting to do.
That sounds fascinating. Which hat do you like to wear the best, by the way? It sounds like articles would be a lot of fun.
Well, articles can be fun, but again, they're not very well paying. And I mean, I would love to be a columnist or something, and if I were syndicated, you know, into 500 or 600 dailies, that would be terrific. But usually you're not. So it really is more of an avocation than it is something that to pay your bills and that sort of thing.